I work for a levy body, so that means that on every animal that's slaughtered, beef or lamb, and for pigs, and we won't go into the other sectors, but in the livestock sector, when an animal is slaughtered, a levy's collected, that levy comes to us, and that's collected under statutory instrument. It's collected by the abattoir and passed back to the levy body for improving the sector. So we're all under one umbrella called the Agricultural Horticultural Development Board, and that's what the government are now seeing as the go-to place for knowledge and research and industry learning. I work for EBLEX and have done for the last 11, 12 years. We have 55,000 beef and lamb levy payers. We don't know who they are because the levy is collected by the abattoir. It's collected at slaughter. Our current income's around 14 million quid, which converts to $24 million, which I guess is a nice sum of money you guys would like to have a proportion of. The levy on lamb is the producer pays $1.06 and the processor pays 35 cents. And I've got to trust that I've done the conversion right, but the 60p and the 20p is absolute. That's what happens. And this proportion here is a historic payment that was collected from the processors as a promotional levy. So the producer paid a general levy, and that went for price reporting, research, knowledge transfer, whatever, all the other things that went on. And the processor was asked to contribute something towards the promotion of the product. We don't really call them those things now, but that is still the way the levy is collected. So what does EBLEX do? Well, it does some R&D, it does some KT, knowledge transfer, that's what that means. Supply chain support, so it works with the processors, it works with butcher shops, provides market information to the industry, live markets, deadweight markets, consumption figures, etc., etc. We do trade marketing, so we work with the independent sector, we work with the retailers to try and find ways of promoting the products, beef and lamb, through those supply chains. And we also do some consumer marketing, so we do stuff in the wider world, sort of digital media, online television adverts, buy beef and lamb sort of messages, and also the good stories behind meat, the healthy stories behind meat. And also very important for us, we do export promotion. So we don't actually sell anything, but we generate interest in the product and put business A in touch with business B to facilitate trade. So we're opening markets in countries, hopefully opening markets in countries around the world to extend our exports. My responsibility is the Better Returns Programme bit, so this is what I brought into EBLEX 12 years ago to set up. It's our farmer-facing activity. Most levy boards around the world all talked, when you speak to them, they all say producers don't know half the things we do. And that's the same with EBLEX. They see this bit very much because these are the events they go to and the publications they receive, but a lot of the export work and the supply chain work, it's a struggle for us to educate them. That's what we're spending their levy on. So my area of the business is to improve the technical information that producers get and encourage them to uptake best practice. And we have about 55,000 lamb producers in England that we have to communicate with. We're currently directly engaging with 28,000, so they've given us their addresses, they're on our database, they're receiving our literature regularly and invitations to events. So the background to how Better Returns Programme, how BRP came about, in the UK 25 years ago, there was a plethora of free advice. There was ADAS, there was the Ministry of Agriculture as it was then, the Grassland Research Institute, even feed companies and pharmaceutical companies. Everyone was giving farmers free advice. It was falling off the shelves at the producers, and it was all free. They didn't pay for any of it. But gradually, as everyone cut back and cut back and cut back, government cutbacks on the free advice that ADAS was providing, and the drug and the commercial companies cut their sales forces back because that wasn't efficient to have people driving around in cars and going up drives. And actually, 10 years ago, there was a dearth of, 12, 15 years ago, there was a dearth of free information. There was a big hole there where farmers had been getting this information. So EBLEX took the decision to take some money from government that was available and start a knowledge transfer program, which is where BRP came about. So we started in 2003. We had some DEFRA pump priming money, which was money that we got from Europe. In 2006, we got some money for the beef sector, so we set up Beef Better Returns Programme. And EBLEX could see that there was a direct benefit to producers by providing this information. So when the government funding stopped, they took the decision to use levy payers' money to continue that knowledge transfer activity. Currently, we're still funded by a levy, but we are able to dip into some European funding, which is called Rural Development Programme for England money, and it covers a whole raft of things, but it covers training and training skills. So we can get some money for some elements of what we do from that. Our annual budget, including staff, is 620,000 quids, and our project budget is about 400,000 quids. I'm sorry, that was one of the figures I didn't translate. But if you work on 1.75, you can kind of work out roughly where that is in terms of our annual budget for everything we do. So when I started the job, the problem is farmers have been receiving information since Noah started picking out lambs and putting them on the boat. And encouraging the uptake of best practice is a hard job, as you guys also know. And so one of the things I wanted to do when I started this 12 years ago was to try and be a little bit different. Why hadn't producers taken on best practice? Why was it needed now? And why hadn't they done it before? So we've tried to be a little bit innovative in the way that we present the information. But when you think of any sort of knowledge transfer, you have to realise that everyone in this room picks up messages very differently. So Tony Tomato up there, I think, is a real activist. He loves his hands-on stuff, but he's also quite a theorist. He likes to read the publication, like the Dutch Greenhouse magazine that he read and built his entire business on, and then found that it was all sort of perhaps potentially fanciful research. Lots of farmers are pragmatists, so how much is it worth to me? Before I think about it, I want to know what it's going to do for me. And some people will pick up the literature and they'll go home and they'll think about it, and then they'll maybe potentially come around to the idea a bit later on. But I think we have a lot of activists. We have a lot of hands-on people. The point there, though, is we learn in different ways. So if you want to design a program to communicate with everybody in the room, you've got to find the buttons which switch them on. We also have this issue, as everyone does, that there are guys up here that are Tony Tomato people who are pushing the boundaries in terms of innovation. And then you've got the next layer behind that see what he does and think, yeah, I think I could do with some of that. And then a bit later on, you get the people that have read about it and seen it, and eventually they follow. And then you get these guys with their heads in the bucket who, for whatever reason, they've got no debt, or they're old and they want to retire or whatever, they're never going to change. So my point is there's no point wasting all of our money and time trying to change these people's attitudes, but we need to work with these guys. But here's the majority of the industry. And if I've got one criticism of what we've done in the last 10 years is we've tried to work at the middle ground and we've forgotten about these guys a little bit. And we need to find things that these guys are fairly self-supporting. You know, Tony Tomato doesn't need me because he's finding all the information out he needs. But I might need him to push those boundaries and provide us with ideas that we can cascade back down the industry. So I just mentioned those two slides. That's this kind of landscape you've got to try and work in, and it's quite complicated sometimes to tick all the boxes and please everybody. So just to remind you, because it's levy funded, we have to provide information to every English levy payer. We're responsible to the EBLEX board, who may decide they want to see something done. We also have an industry steering group, which is part of our historical setup, that has auctioneers, abattoir owners, producers, everyone across the industry to feed into and steer the direction of the project and the project ideas we come up with. In the last few years, we've also set up progressive groups from the top of that triangle to help us stimulate us in terms of some of the ideas that are needed to push us forward. And through EBLEX, we have a regional team of people. We have 6 regional guys around the UK whose job it is to be out there on the ground, and they're very involved in the delivery of the projects that we do to producers.